calling me.
Well, that's always good to have a call from the kiddo. All right, looks like Facebook is up and running. So I think we're just about ready. We've got about 1 more minute. So if you've just now joined us, welcome. We're so happy to have you join us today for our webinar. We're going to get started in just a moment. In the meantime, we do love to hear from you. So feel free to jump in that chat box, say hello to us, and let us know where you're from. All right, I do show 12:15, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Once again, welcome, and thank you all for joining us today for our webinar on smart transitions, leveraging assistive technology for success. My name is Stephanie McLaughlin, and I am the Training and Evaluation Specialist for Partners Resource Network. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of Parent Training and Information Centers, or PTIs. PTIs are funded through the Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. The 4 PTI projects throughout Texas are PACT, PACT, and TEAM. And our mission here at Partners Resource Network is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. And also joining us today from Partners Resource Network is our Director of Statewide Services, Christina Henning, our support specialist, Chelsea Rivas, and our technology specialist, Zach Hidalgo. If you're having any technical difficulties, please reach out to Zach in the chat box today. And for those of you that are needing a certificate of attendance, you will be receiving an email to thank you for joining us for today's webinar. If you follow the link in the email, you can get your certificate of attendance. We will have a question and answer time at the end of the presentation. If you're joining us on Zoom, please type your questions in the Q&A box. And if you're joining us on Facebook, please type your questions in the comments section. A recording of today's webinar will be available on our website at prntexas.org and on our Facebook page. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our speaker today, Dr. John Smith from the University of Kansas. Let me stop sharing and I'll let you share, Dr. Smith.
Great. Hello, everybody. Sean Smith here at the University of Kansas. And I'm going to get a thumbs up or, well, I'm guessing you can see. I'll hear if you cannot see my screen from one of our colleagues there.
We can see.
Thank you so much. Faculty member here at the University of Kansas, but involved with a number of different projects. There's some hyperlinks to some projects, basically working in virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and other types of technology tools to support all learners, but particularly students with disabilities. So work with a lot of educators, work with a lot of related service personnel, work with undergraduates, graduate students, and doctoral students. And probably most important, though, I'm a parent of 4 children. One is a 23-year-old with Down syndrome. And so I'm continuing to live this transition. And the stories we could tell. We could do group therapy here for me with Nolan. A little bit about Nolan, though. Nolan is a 23-year-old, about to turn 24, actually. Birthday party this weekend, and of course next weekend as well. It's probably going to be a week long. But Nolan is a graduate of Lawrence High School here in Lawrence, Kansas. He's also a graduate of the University of Kansas. We have a 2-year post-secondary program for individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities. He now currently works for the University of Kansas as a teacher's aide in an early childhood program. We have several early childhood programs here on campus, and that was his love and passion, and was fortunate to be hired to do that. So you're going to hear from the perspective of a teacher educator, researcher, as well as a parent. So the resources today can all be found this QR code or at this bit.ly. And I'm going to ask one of our colleagues that are facilitating this to put this also into the chat so that folks can see it in the chat. If not, I'll post it later on as well, but I'll leave it here for just a moment. And for those unfamiliar with bit.ly, bit.ly is a great little technology. You can take any URL. So I've taken my Google Slides, which is about 70 characters, and brought them down to that's about a dozen characters, give or take. And if you are typing that in, you will want to do uppercase B, Y, and U, and then lowercase the R, S, and M. Otherwise, it's pretty easy, and or grab that QR code. So I'll put this up at the end of our presentation as well, because I need to get going with everything I want to cover. So today, I'm going to basically cover a fair amount of information, a fair amount of geography. And the reason being is I know we have a variety of stakeholders with us today. I know we have some parents, and with parents, we probably have a variety of age groups, a variety of disabilities. And so, of course, a lot of different things going on there. And then, of course, we have educators. And imagine with our educators, we have some special educators. Imagine some transition folks, maybe some 18 to 21 folks. I imagine we have some related service providers, and I know I'm missing some as well. So with that kind of variability in our audience, I want to share a number of different ideas to make some connections. And my goal is that you're going to walk away here with a nugget or two or three or four for you to further appreciate and expand upon in your own personal circumstance. So with that said, you know, I used Google Images, and I said, hey, what are assistive technologies for transition? And this is literally probably the best image that popped up. And I did this purposely just to share with you, we're not talking about this limited amount of technology. There's so much technology out there, so many resources that many of us are using daily in our lives that we need to integrate in a meaningful way with the children that we're working with, the young adults. I'm sorry, my son is 23 going on 24, as I mentioned, but he's still my little boy, right? And he doesn't like that because he's a man. But anyways, I share this because I wanted to be purposeful about the fact that there's so much out there, and it's not limited to that image. But I thought that was kind of interesting that popped up. Let's get started, though, because the title of the presentation is assistive technology. So let's make sure we're all on the same page here. And there's relevance to this for several different reasons, and I'm going to reinforce it in just a moment. But as you look at this definition, I want to reinforce a few things. First of all, the word any item, okay? So therefore, pretty much any type of low, mid, and high tech technology is going to be relevant. And oh wait, well, what does it need to do, Sean? Well, it needs to be used, okay, to increase, maintain, or improve functional capabilities or capacity. Okay, well, what's that, Sean? Well, functional could definitely be educational, could be adaptive, could be job, could be career. The list goes on. So I leave this up here for one more minute, well, less than a minute, to reinforce the fact that any technology tool you can think of that has relevancy to supporting individuals with disabilities is going to fall under this broad definition of AT. Now, I'm actually going to pivot from AT in just a moment, but I do want you to know that the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, put out a myth and fact document at the beginning of this year because of our lack of integration of technology with individuals with disabilities. And of course, that goes from what? Birth? Well, IDA 3 to 21, but really we're talking birth to adulthood. Assistive technology centers across the country, of course, are serving across the lifespan. But let's play with this for a moment. This is out of their documentation. So myth or fact, AT should be considered at some IEP team programs. Now we know that is a myth because, of course, the fact is that every time we meet for the IEP, we need to consider AT. We need to. There's a checkbox generally on most of our IEP forms. So this is something that's been with us since 1997. Congress thinks technology is so relevant and so important. Here we go. Myth or fact, IEP teams must consider AT devices for all children in IEPs and must provide fully funded the AT devices, etc. And of course, that is a fact. We need to do that. And oftentimes folks think that it's optional. Oftentimes folks think that we provide the technology, but not the service and the training. I have a sister who has a son with autism and needs level 3 supports. He uses the LAMP device, and honestly, they need much more training and support for him to be independent with that. We don't want to abandon that AAC device. Myth or fact, providing an AT device to a child with disabilities satisfies IDA's AT requirements. And there, of course, is IDA requires IP teams to consider whether a child with a disability needs an AT device and services. And so that's the fact of things. I could go on and on and on, but what I want to do is I want to make sure you have this resource. I've given you another QR code in a bit.ly, but of course, this is within the presentation. But this is a publication that was published at the beginning of this year. And the reason being is that the government knows and the community knows we're under integrating assistive technology. And oftentimes it's a misunderstanding. And so that's why they did it in a fun way, myth and fact. And I think they have 19 different myths and facts. Don't quote me on it, but I think we're pretty close to 19. And with that, they give a lot of additional information to share with you about what we need to be thinking of when we think of technology for individuals with disabilities. Now, with that said, you're like, well, get to the transition part, Sean. Well, before I leave the AT, you're going to leave the AT, Sean? I am. I'm actually going to go more broadly for technology. And why? Because of that definition, which I'll remind us in just a moment. But if you are thinking, well, Sean, okay, I want to know more about considering AT. So I've been told I'm supposed to use it in every IEP. I'm supposed to consider it for every IEP. But what does that mean, Sean? And what's the process? And of course, I'm not saying we need to assess every child for AT in the IEP. I'm not saying that. I'm saying rather, when we're talking about the needs, when we're talking about goals and benchmarks, when we're talking about accommodations and things of that nature, that's where technology can play a role. For those of us who are unfamiliar with it, there's a 4-step AT model consideration. I've given you a link there. There's also resources in Ohio and national resources for consideration. There's a wonderful tool called the WADI. It's out of Wisconsin. It's free. It does a great job for assessment. It's an extensive tool. The SET framework, it's hyperlinked. So if you haven't gotten the picture here yet, all these things, folks, are hyperlinked. So most of my images are hyperlinked. As you can see, my mouse goes over it and it turns into a finger, meaning, oh, I can click on that and it'll take me to an additional resource. So those are some resources if you are looking to assess and further consider AT. The assistive technology internet modules are free out of the Ohio Center on Autism and Low Incidence Disabilities. It's a wonderful set of modules. They're all free for educators and parents, anyone that wants to learn about assessment, consideration, different AT, et cetera, et cetera. I highly recommend it. They take about 60 to 90 minutes. Wonderful resource there. And I share this, and I'm going to stop talking about AT, folks. I'm going to start talking now technology and transition. But I share this because oftentimes we think technology and individuals with disabilities, we think assistive technology, which is great. But remember, this definition means pretty much any technology we're talking about that's relevant to the overall development of the individual with a disability is going to fall under what we then consider assistive technology. Yes, AAC, augmentative alternative communication devices. Yes, switches. Yes, mobility aids. But so much more from a learning and cognitive perspective are also relevant. And that's what I want to really expand upon today in this presentation. So with that said, in order for us to really consider and think about all this technology for transition, I want to reinforce something that many of you are familiar with, and maybe some of you are not as familiar with, but it's a great way to guide us in thinking about technology and transition. And that is basically the Universal Design for Learning framework. Now, I'll get to that in just a moment, but before I get there, in terms of our pathway to technology transition, I do want to emphasize a few things. So I went out and Googled again in preparation for this presentation and said, okay, well, when we're thinking about transition, of course, we've improved upon thinking it's just not post-secondary, although it is, and we'll talk about that in terms of post-secondary. But here's the Navigate Life Texas, and you can go there when you have a chance. I thought I hyperlinked it there. Oh, yeah, I hyperlinked it. That will take you to some resources, but I argue that a lot of those are focusing on transitions beyond high school. It's post-secondary, not necessarily education, but career, et cetera. And then the National Technical Assistance Center on Transition, funded out of the U.S. Department of Ed, does focus a lot on that transition post-secondary. And yet, here's Maryland. They do a nice visual, and this is hyperlinked, to tell you about, well, no. Transition goes throughout the lifespan. And educationally, my goodness, it's not one of our critical transitions from birth to 3 to 3 to 5. Is that not a critical transition? We'll get to that in just a second. So when I talk transitions, yes, I'll be mentioning the fact that we need to think about transitions into post-secondary in terms of education, career, work, community, et cetera, but also very much so across the entire learning experience. So some of these visuals I don't think are representative of those types of issues. And I'll let you guys think about that at your leisure. But with that, what I want to talk about with our transition for learners, and I will do it through the framework in just a moment, is there's transitions within the classroom that are critical. I'm working with several schools right now where their really focus is on individuals with autism and intellectual disabilities. And my goodness, if we don't support accurate transitions within the classroom, we're going to see our students communicating with us. And as many of us know, they'll be behaviorally communicating or communicating through behavior. We also know there's transitions within the school day that can become very problematic. I'll give you some examples as we go along that we'll need technology for. Of course, transitions from year to year. A buddy of mine is in Louisiana. Their district goes K through 2, and then 3, 4, and 5, and then 6, 7, and 8, and then 9 through 12. So they've broken their elementary school up into 2 schools, making not 3 transitions during the academic K through 12, but 4. I don't know why, and my goodness, it's causing lots of problems right now. And then, of course, transition at key junctures, transition from 3 to 5 to kindergarten, transition from elementary to middle to secondary, so of course, and then, of course, beyond high school. So we're going to talk a lot about that as we go along, but I want us thinking about all those different transitions because technology can be critical at all those times. So I'm going to ask us for just a moment, and if you would, I'm going to stop sharing for just a second. And why don't you pop over if you can, and maybe you can't, I'm not sure. Can we, doesn't look like, oh, can everyone, if you, yes, you are, you're able to. Could you please pop into the chat when you think transition, what comes to mind? When you think transitions, what comes to mind? So I'll give an example, and that waterfall was an example there. We'll just do a little waterfall here in the chat. When I think of transitions, I think of transitions year to year. So I'll post that in there, and I think other people can do. I'll give it a second or two. When you think of transitions, what pop into your mind? Is it that post-secondary? Is it that career? I see one in post-secondary. I think transitions to and from classes and from grade to grade, changes in motion reaction, good. School to school, another stage in their educational career, okay. Never-ending change, I like that, okay. Put your seatbelt on, totally agree with you there. All activities preparing for employment and after education, excellent, okay. All right, thank you. So I'll let you guys continue there, and I'm gonna go back to sharing. And of course, hold on just a second. I need to get out of my presentation mode there, and then I'll go ahead and share so you can see it. So thank you for sharing those, and continue to share as you go along. But and by the way, this is Niagara Falls. I grew up not too far from here, so whenever I think of a waterfall, I think of Niagara Falls. But you know, it's interesting. So when I go to technology and transition in technology nationally, the NTEC Center, the NTEC Tech Center comes up, which is that National Technical Assistance Center, and they think of more information technologies, and they think more transitions into the post, education, post K through 12 or 18 to 21. But yet I want to really focus in on lots of different areas. And so I want to do this through, first of all, if I'm going to think of technology, and any technology tool I think of, I'm going to share with you several. I want you to be thinking of it from a multiple means of engagement, representation, and action expression or demonstration. Now, I will bring these out in just a moment from a technology perspective. But this is a way for me to get a handle on all the different technologies out there. So what I mean by this is that if I'm trying to help a young adult like Nolan, allow for him to demonstrate what he knows, there's a lot of technology out there. And there's a lot of technology that will allow him to be successful as he transitions, as he gets through high school, as he goes into college, if he goes to college, as he goes into career, as he goes into the community, allowing him to communicate what he knows. A lot of technology does that. But what UDL does, the Universal Design for Learning Framework does, is it offers some guidance. And let me give you a brief example and move on. And I know I want to cover so much in a limited period of time. You see the bicycles here on the left-hand side. And so the way to look at the framework is 2 different ways, at least 2 different ways. First of all, there are these principles, and these principles give us guidance. And if you haven't taken a look at the guidelines, there's a hyperlink down here that will walk you through version 2 and version 3.0 that will give you some meaning. Each of these 3 principles have guidelines, guidelines have checkpoints, and they give you ways to really walk you through elements. But let me give you the bicycle, for example. So oftentimes from the first stage, when we design options for welcoming interests and identities, think of this as almost like recruiting interest. Now, oftentimes with my bicycle example is we, the parent or the educator, is doing the work for the child. And there's technologies that allow us to recruit interest and allow us to optimize relevance to the individual, allow us to get them to think about things, okay? But what we want to do in all the development we want to facilitate is we want to take the child from where we're biking to the fact that they're on the 10 speed. So from a multiple means of engagement perspective, we want to begin with recruiting interest to a point where we're basically allowing them to regulate. We're allowing them to have executive function skills. And technology can do that incrementally. Now, I'll give you some examples as we go along, but for those of us who are familiar with the framework, I hope that you're thinking of all these solutions through the framework lens. If you're not, it might be something to take a look at. And by the way, the framework offers supports in all sorts of different barriers, meaning we can eliminate those barriers through the framework. And again, technology will be our solution. So let me give you an example. First of all, there's lots of resources on this. These are slides that are all hyperlinked to resources. I'll let you take a look at this at your leisure. But let me give you an example in terms of that transition. And I'm going to do it through an example with my own son and do it in an example that offers technology, but it also offers that what our overall focus is. Now, this is going to be an elementary example. It's going to be inclusionary, but then I'll bring it over to our transition. So Nolan's included in the 4th grade classroom, and they're about to do an assignment on the presidents. And so let me give you an example with the technology in UDL, and then we'll pivot it over to transition even further. So he's needing to do a project where basically he has to hit some library standards because this is getting into the library and doing research. He has to hit some English language arts standards, and he also has to hit some social studies standards. For about a 6-week process, he is basically having to be capable of doing this work, and the overall work is a report on a president, and he's going to do George Washington. Now, he's not a reader. He's fairly limited back in 4th grade. He's fairly limited as a reader. He's very limited as a writer. And by the way, the project has to be a written report and a poster. So all of a sudden, he has some barriers here. And these are barriers that he's just not going to get beyond if they don't redesign it from a universal design for learning perspective. And so for Nolan's trying to be included in language arts, in social studies, otherwise he's going to go off to the resource room and do something opposite for the next 4 to 6 weeks. And so what we do right from the get-go, first of all, is we allow Nolan to present his report. And by the way, this is a real example. And this is a class of across 3 sections of 4th grade, about 90 students. And they go into the library. At the end of this 4 to 6 week experience, the public library actually comes to the local school library, and they do an event that day. Parents come in, they look at the posters, they look at the papers. And what I was able to do with some parents is 6 of us were able to advocate for presentations. Nolan was the only one with a disability. The other parents just liked the idea. So Nolan was able to demonstrate what he knew through a presentation. All right, but now research-wise, what he did was he went to using technology. He used YouTube to learn about George Washington. He used Newsela, which basically levels text to learn about George Washington. He found items on Bookshare that text-to-speech that read to him. And he also found a number of books that were at a kindergarten, 1st grade level, which limited his ability to need to read. So he also got professional help there. So from a UDL perspective and a technology perspective, he gained access to this so he could then participate and learn and develop the skills. So think of this, we'll get to transition in just a moment, but think of this in terms of he used this to be able to collect the information in the library and collect it on George Washington, like we might need to collect information about a job. We might need to collect information about job skills, and I'll get into that in just a second. So instead of it saying it had to be through text, it had to be through reading, it had to be at a certain reading level, we got rid of all those barriers, and instead we used technology with multiple means of representation. Now, he organized that information. Instead of using a traditional text and an outline, he used a visual organizer. Very helpful. Visuals are very powerful, as we know. We'll get into that in just a second with a transition. And then he presented it. He presented it instead of having to write a written report or a poster. And so that's multiple means of action and demonstration. Now you say, well, Sean, he didn't use the technology for that. Well, there's a lot of folks creating videos today. They're using presentations that are digital to be able to share what they know. And again, I'll get into some more work-related things as well as some more transition-related things in just a moment. But the last example here is the actual presentation. And I wish I had video of it. I cannot find it. I know I collected it somewhere. But Nolan, as you can see there, he's ready as George Washington. He actually had the white hair. We don't know what happened to that in that picture. He actually had a presentation ready to go. Now, of course, he's a limited reader, as I mentioned before. So it's big ideas that we really focused on, although he had a sheet of paper there. Now, Dad was all ready for him when he presented, and he's sitting in the back. But I'm getting ahead of myself because before he left the house that school day, I still remember it vividly. He said, "Dad," and he's in his George Washington stuff. Well, he doesn't have his own, but we have it all together. He has 3 other siblings, so there's 4 elementary age kids trying to get out the door. And Dad, I need a picture of Martha Washington. Now, by the way, his script and all his research had nothing to do with Martha Washington. I was there along the way. I know he did not get ready for Martha Washington. He's speaking about George, but he needed a picture. So sure enough, I run upstairs. That's where our printer is. And I print off a picture of Martha Washington. And I run back downstairs and I give it to him. I say, "Come on, let's get in the car." And he says, "Dad, I need it in color." So of course I run back upstairs, and by this time I'm probably saying a few words about Nolan under my breath, and I print it out in color, and I run back downstairs, and I'm like, "Okay, get in the car." Everyone else is in the car. "Dad, I need it in a frame." So of course I take that frame that actually was in our living room. I throw Martha Washington in there. I forget about Martha and Nolan because I get them off to school, and the presentation's not till about 2 o'clock. So I show up at 2 o'clock for this presentation. And meanwhile, I'm focused now on, is Nolan going to mess up? Is Nolan going to, of course, me glass half empty, but that's what I'm focused on. So he starts to present. And as he starts to present, he starts talking about what's on the script, what we practiced. So he's going along pretty well. And then all of a sudden, he goes off and he starts talking about Martha Washington. And folks, Martha Washington is not on the script. And I'm like, what is he talking about? He's talking about Martha Washington had some children, and George Washington was a stepfather, and how they loved him, and how George did this with Martha, and George and Martha visited during the Revolutionary War to Valley Forge. All information that was not on the script, and I did not know he knew this. And then he gets up and he picks up the picture, and he says he loves Martha Washington, and he kisses Martha Washington's picture. Now, the reason I'm sharing this with you is, did Nolan know about George Washington? He sure did. He knew so much about George Washington, he ad-libbed about Martha Washington. Now, why did he know? Because we used technology to be able to get this information, and we did it in a UDL framework way. Now, that's a very short version of the UDL framework, but it's a way of contextualizing and organizing that technology. So, for example, let's think of the iPhone. Nolan needs executive function skills for him to be engaged. So Nolan uses his phone, or it could be an iPad, but during high school and during middle school, he used his phone as a reminder that there was 5 minutes left in class to get ready with all his stuff to move to the next class. Now, some of you may say, well, we have a solution where the child just leaves the class 5 minutes early. And I'm like, why would we want the child to leave the class 5 minutes early and leave whatever they're doing, losing instructionally wise? Are they going to be able to leave work 5 minutes early? Or, et cetera, et cetera. And so Nolan instead had a vibrator. It didn't offer sound. The phone would vibrate saying, "Oh, I need to do the following." He did not need a parent to prompt him. He did not need the teacher to prompt him, although the teacher was prompting everyone else. But those verbal responses in the class, "Okay, folks, get ready, put your books together," that wasn't enough for Nolan. That was just one way. He needed multiple means of representation, so he used the phone with a vibrator. He also had a calendar, and the calendar was visual, and so it told him where he needed to be on a given time and a given day. And of course, in high school, that calendar changed 5 days a week. So depending upon the time of day, he had to switch. And oh, by the way, you can set up your phone to offer that, depending upon the day of the week, it will offer certain reminders. And he just did that through his time alarms. In terms of speech to text for communication, he used that not only to interact with the Alexas of the world, but also to allow for him to interact with the speech functions for Siri and other things for him to interact with the phone for his learning purposes. He used Google Maps for navigation around the community. And so if you haven't used that, where you can actually visualize where you are, it will actually give you the street view and show you how you're supposed to walk to the bus, where the bus station is, et cetera, instead of just a cartoon image. So he used that. He used QR codes throughout the building as reminders, as many students did, because they were in a one-to-one environment. Everyone had an iPad, so they could use their iPads to remind them where they were, where they need to go, et cetera. And we can talk about that all day, but QR codes can be used lots of different ways. He used a variety of visual supports, everything from visual schedules to first then charts, to picture cards, to visual timers, to behavior charts, to reminders, to graphic organizers. He used those visual supports throughout his middle and high school experience, and also elementary, to be able to understand, okay, so our learners need to understand what they're supposed to be doing at a certain time. We can color code, we can color them. The timers tell us how much time we have left. Of course, many of those are color orientated as well. We have visual schedules also in terms of what we need to be doing for sequencing. We have visuals for sequencing to know that a transition is about to take place. We have visuals to let an individual know that they've actually completed a task to be able to move on to the next task. We'll get to that in transition cards in just a moment. So a lot of those tools are available technology-wise. I don't know how we do actually almost any of these without some sort of technology. Video modeling is another critical tool. Again, from a multiple means of representation, it allows us to visualize so many different things, right? Social skills, we can create social stories. I'll give an example of that in virtual reality in just a moment. We can create video models on daily living skills, skills that they would learn independently within the classroom. And again, transitions, movement, without reminders or with limited reminders, getting to and from a location. Those are all critical adaptive skills, but also critical skills during the part of the school day. Being able to get into a class and open up what you're supposed to do independently without a para or someone prompting you. Those are all could be done through visual supports, and then video modeling to walk you through what you're supposed to do, what's appropriate, what the sequence is, what the steps are. And by the way, with video modeling, I can be it on my phone or on my iPad or on my Chrome device and watch it in real time to remind me, oh, that's right, this is the next step, this is the next step, this is the next step. And I can do it in so many different areas. And then finally, video can be used, and if I have time, I'll get to that, to allow the individual to demonstrate what they know. So we can get them to be using video modeling, but also video while they're in school to then utilize that out in the community. So Nolan has created so many video models over the years, and we have as well with him, from everything from taking the bus, from learning a series of sequences that he needs to do for lunch prep, where he's a teacher aide, or for lunch cleanup. There's 5 to 6 sequence steps that we've video modeled for him, and we've also created some social narratives for him to walk through to understand. And these are things we could do, social narratives, video models. We could be using that in pre-K, and that's a format that is digitally that can be very effective. This is a hyperlink to a presentation. I'll just click on it so you're aware of it. This is a hyperlink to a presentation on everything from timers to transition cards to the use of visual schedules. And it's something I've done in the past, and I do not have time enough for it right now, but I wanted you to be aware that there's a lot of resources here, and there's hyperlinked to various resources in terms of how to use first then, to use visual schedules, to use communication boards, et cetera. And that's hyperlinked right from the presentation from today. So everything I just mentioned very briefly here, I have much more thoroughly in this presentation, so I'll leave that to you for later. But because of time and what I want to cover, I'm making you aware of some of those resources, okay? Now, this is a resource I want to make you aware of in terms of its virtual reality. It's free. It sits on your iPad. It sits on your Chromebook. And basically, it allows an individual to develop social skills necessary to have out in the real world, to have in middle school, to have in upper elementary, to have in high school, but also to have post-school as well. And these are the 10 domains. These are very common domains that we assess, the SSIS, the ASSP, that we assess for social skill. And we know there's a lot of our learners have those deficits, individuals with learning disabilities, autism, Down syndrome, intellectual disabilities, et cetera. And so basically what we've done is we've identified 10 primary areas, and each area has a series of scenarios. We have 140 plus scenarios, 180 plus skills that we're teaching, and each scenario takes, 3 to 5 to 7 minutes, depending upon the individual. Now, what am I talking about? Well, basically the following, folks. I get into the app. So this is a vision from the Chrome or the iPad, and I have a domain. Remember, I shared the domains a moment ago, those 10 domains. Well, here's one of the domains, self-awareness and advocacy or self-regulation. And the way the system is organized is there's two parts to voice. Part one has the first 5 domains, and part two has the 6 through 10. So I select one of the domains, and there I see all the different scenarios associated with it. Some of them have up to 20. This one has 30 different scenarios. And so, like I said, those scenarios take between 3 to 7 minutes for a student to complete. And again, they're organized under scenarios, but also tasks. So we select a task, and this is relationship skills, response to offers to join in. And there's 3 scenarios associated with that. So again, we start with the domains, into tasks, into a scenario, and then we get into an actual scenario. So here you go, real briefly.
Challenges. Brian is in the way. You'll want to kindly ask him to move.
Too bad. I'm not moving.
So as the individual moves through these scenarios, they interact with avatars that are pre-programmed, and they have an instructional coach or a social skill coach that speaks to them as they move through. And so they'll go through hallways, classrooms, gym, the bus, cafeteria, the list goes on. And as they go through here, they interact with these avatars that are pre-programmed based on their responses. And their responses are, as you noticed a moment ago, they are text-based, but now very soon with AI, the individual will be able to interact with them as if they're talking to the avatar in the real world. So these are technologies currently available. Voice is one of several. It's free. It sits on the iPad and the Chromebook to allow for the individual to interact and develop social skills. So that would be an example of technology for transition. I can use it upper elementary, middle, secondary. I could use it post-secondary as well to develop skills I'm going to need when I get out into employment, get out into the workforce, get out into college, get out into just the general community. But before we leave, we need to talk AI because AI is just exploding. AI is really revolutionizing things. And I want to give you a little taste for those of us already familiar with it and utilizing it. Now, first of all, AI is very much available right now. And if we're not having our individuals use it, I want to reinforce many of us are already using AI on a daily basis just to open up our phones, right? The phone looks at our face, the face knows it's us, and that's AI. Of course, we've been using AI with Alexa and things of that nature. And by the way, as a side to Alexa, I'll give Nolan as an example. Nolan has his own Alexa. It reminds him to get up. It reminds him to get ready. It reminds him to go to bed. It reminds him to call his girlfriend. He has a series of reminders, and it's set for each of the day. It knows what day it is. So Sunday, it offers a different alarm or no alarm, although it does have an alarm for church, but sometimes he misses that. He gets to call his girlfriend different times on the weekends than during the weekdays. So that, of course, is set differently. And, of course, he can interact with it. And you're saying, wait, a child with Down syndrome with poor communication can interact with Alexa? You may be unfamiliar with this, but Google actually, to the pandemic, brought dozens of individuals with Down syndrome to California to learn, for the system to learn from them. And so I only offer that because these speech-to-text AI devices are very intelligent based on the fact that they've been trained with individuals with articulation and stuttering challenges. So there's so many different AIs out there. Co-writer folks, word prediction. Many of us use it on our phone. We don't like it on our phone because it predicts the wrong word. But for our individuals with disabilities, oh my goodness, word prediction can help them in terms of communicating with others, with text, with writing, so many other ways. And of course, there's so many other technologies that are currently out there that are AI based. But there's also things that are in our schools that are AI based. Text to speech. If we're not using text to speech, meaning that we're highlighting text as it is read to us. That is limiting the independence of an individual. It's a skill they need because it's something that they can use on the job with text for directions. If they're using a device, which pretty much today, devices are pretty much integrated into the workforce, text-to-speech is sitting on most devices. It's all I need is the text, and then the text-to-speech like read, write, or other things, or accessibility features, or immersive reader. For example, in the college environment, we use Canvas. Canvas is our learning management system. Immersive reader is built in, so text-to-speech is built in. So we better be using these with our students in the elementary, middle, secondary environments because they're in the post-secondary world environment as well. And again, that's AI. everything from text to speech to text. But we're also finding that we're leveling text. So we're using that technology for individuals that are trying to understand directions, individuals that are trying to understand words for a variety of different purposes. Maybe it is to complete assignments so that we can get a degree, so that we can have more opportunities post-secondary versus a previously type of diploma that limited our choices. We can level our text in several different ways with AI. Newsela is one of our more popular ones, but I'm going to show you a couple more before we finish here. Now, as we get into artificial intelligence, there's a lot of things to unpack, and many of us may be a bit overwhelmed. I'm giving you some resources at a later date that you can take a look at, just more of an FYI. First of all, it's the terminology. And I want to focus on large language models. I'm not going to offer the definition now. It's there in front of you. You can look at it at your leisure. I want to instead offer some examples. So there's some more information about terminology you can look at your leisure. But let's go to a couple different things. Let's start off with something called Magic School. Many of us are probably familiar with Magic School. It's been out there for several years, and it's actually several years. It's been out there for over 2 years. So let's go ahead, and I'm actually going to copy and paste this element right here because I want to share with you an example. So let's go to Magic School. And it popped over to the text leveler, but I want to go into its broader ones. And what I want to do is, first of all, if you're unfamiliar with Magic School, these are tools that, yes, we can use as educators, but also begin to have students use, and I'll show you some student use in a few minutes, or that we can utilize with them to allow for them to have more inclusion in our classrooms, which means more inclusion in our classrooms means that they have more opportunities to learn to be able to develop those skills that are necessary for that post-secondary opportunity, be it the 300 plus post-secondary colleges and universities and or the work environment. So let me go to the IP generator. And this is a great way, first of all, to connect with our families, because our families can utilize elements of this. We can utilize elements of this. But I want to bring it to, let's say we have a fourth grader, okay? And we'll have a fourth grader with Down syndrome. So we're just going to do that, Down syndrome. If I can actually type here. And then I'm going to copy and paste in some information. Oh, I said third grader in my thing. We'll just get rid of that. And we're going to just simply generate. And what it's going to do is AI is going to generate present level performance, and then it's going to give us some measurable goals, in the area of phonological awareness, reading comprehension, and attention based on the little information I shared. And so this is now available to me. I can edit it. I can click to edit, and I can actually have a little word processor to edit it as I'd like to go along. The other thing I can do here is I can also copy it. I can read it aloud. Now, this could be something I'm using in partnership with families to have them better understand what the needs are of their child. They can utilize it that way. I can generate more to be able to quickly get it. And of course, in terms of IEPs where I'm trying to have the student involved, AI can help the student get involved as well. I'll let you guys talk about that and think about that at a later date. But I just want to make you aware of Magic School offers, let me go back to Magic School for just a second. Magic School offers lots of different tools. And I'm going to go back to here real quick and go back that are organized under content, questions, planning. So we want an individual to be able to be more independent in their planning. Maybe it's to be able to create presentations to demonstrate what they know. Maybe it's more, again, this is more learning based, but it could be in the idea of project-based learning. It could be things that we're trying to create as well, but also could be tools as these things continue to advance, tools our learners can use, and I'm going to share with you one in just a moment. These are continuing to change, so it's a repository for a number of AI tools that are increasingly getting more intelligent out there for that independence. But that's the start. Let me give you a few more for consideration, okay? Oh, and by the way, they have a text leveler tool. And if you're unfamiliar with Bookshare, here's Bookshare. I've given you a hyperlink to Bookshare. You take a look at text leveler, and it actually will level the text. And actually, let me give you an example of that. And so I'm going to, and I think I have it open here. Let's see if I've grabbed that. Oh, I had it open here. Where did I put it? I think I put it over here in my second. Yes, I did. Nope. Well, we'll get to that later. Or actually, I'll just mention it real quick, and then you can get to it later. I had an example open. It looked like I closed it. I apologize. But Bookshare, if you're unfamiliar with Bookshare, offers over 1 million resources that are free for individuals with disabilities, pre-K through 821. And so any textbook, essay, things of that nature is in a digital format for the individual to use for text-to-speech. That's already built in there. But I could grab that text, and that's what I had open, and I apologize, I closed it, but I'm going to run out of time, so let me continue on here. But I can copy and paste from Bookshare into a text leveler to level the text, meaning now I have it, instead of a 10th grade reading level, I can bring it down to a 2nd grade reading level. I could bring it down to a 1st grade reading level. So now an individual that's being asked to read, and it could be the local newspaper where I want them to be more independent with the news. And of course, local newspapers now, digital-wise, national and local, will also read it to the individual. So I can get the text-to-speech, I can copy and paste it, and level the text, have it read to the individual. Individual can have it read to them in a variety of different ways. So a lot of different tools here for our consideration. So we'll move on from Magic School. School AI also offers a repository for us to make things easier for the individual to be able to support them. And of course, there's other things there. Let me share with you something. And this is, DFIT is one of several resources, but let me share with you DFIT. And I'm going to go over here. And DFIT basically allows us to take any resource we find out there on the web. And I'm going to go over to DFIT. DFIT is an AI tool. They say it's for teachers, but this is a type of tool that I could be utilizing as a parent, where I'm trying to get information and trying to help my child be more included in the class so they can then participate to move to more options for it comes to post-secondary or, again, career opportunities. So here I can take, let's say I'm in U.S. government, and I want to take a presentation that my teacher shared with me on the 3 branches of government. What DFIT will do is it will take those 3 branches of the government video, and then it will repurpose it into a variety of resources. These resources could then be used by my son or daughter or the student I'm working with. Oops, I didn't sign in. So let me sign in. And I want to make sure I have access to everything here. Hopefully I can do it post after having done that. Okay, and I'm good there. Okay, so what it's first of all done is it's taken the video and it's grabbed images out there from the internet. So for example, I like this image. It gives this idea of the government being 3 branches, and government's important. I got to pass a U.S. government to graduate from high school, to finish high school. So to meaningfully participate, DFIT can break down this video. It's a 15-minute video into different visuals, but more importantly, it can take this information and basically, here's Kylie, and I can basically say, well, Kylie, that's great, but I want to adjust the length, and I want to make it, well, short is pretty good, but I could go back to the original length and generate that, and you'll see it'll go much longer in terms of the text. So here we go. Here's Kaylee, and I could go on and on and on with a full text. Okay, if I showed you the original version, it was a couple paragraphs. So that adjusts right from the get-go. It gives me a summary of what Kaylee shared. So there's my 3 primary points. So now my study, I could quickly study something like this, quickly understand something like this. And by the way, I don't need to know anything about the U.S. government to be able to assist this child in this manner. I'm getting some resources. It gives me the definitions with examples right from the get-go from that video. It's all coming from the video. It gives me multiple choice questions from the video to be able to test on. It gives me short answer questions, open answer questions, but it also gives me, oh, well, gosh, how can I go ahead and better understand the vocabulary? Well, here I could better understand the vocabulary with a guide it created. And then I can use this guide to help organize my thoughts with that information. So there's a lot of different resources here that DFIT allows me to utilize, all from a copy and paste from a presentation, and then AI did the rest of the work. I'll let you play with that at your leisure, but it's just one of multiple examples that are basically taking information and repurposing it literally at a point and click. And now I have more availability to it for my understanding, for my participation, from a multiple means of representation, from a UDL perspective, and then I can be more involved and engaged in that classroom, developing those skills that will lead me to needs as I transition. All right, those are some other resources there. That's something I can get to in a better. So one of the things that I think we need to be doing from a transition perspective also is allowing our individuals to better understand how to utilize this AI. Now, I mentioned Alexa, and of course, Alexa starts off with verbal prompting. And the better the question, the better the prompt. And no one will get exacerbated asking questions or trying to get information. And he's learned, well, I have to ask it a certain way. And so this is something we should be teaching our youngsters. And I actually had this visual here because this is a game where I'm actually, it's an example of how I introduce prompting with my own students, both at the college level, but also K-12. And that is, so I have a picture and I want the person next to me that doesn't have the picture drawing the picture. So what would I give them word-wise, prompting-wise, to help them do that? And oftentimes we'll do a game where we restrict the words they can use. And in so doing, the learner learns, oh, how to say something in a fairly defined manner. Yes, it is verbal, but we can also type as well. But it all gets this idea of prompting. And I may be going over the heads of some of us or others of us. You're like, of course, Sean, prompting is really critical. Well, there's a lot of different resources out there for prompting. And so, for example, here's one in terms of helping educators to facilitate prompting. Here's another one called the Framework for Educators. And by the way, the more we understand how to use the AI and the prompting, we can then engage some of our learners to use the chat bots that are increasingly becoming available, be it travel, be it navigation of the bus system, be it understanding the maps of the local community, be it trying to break down information to make reservation, whatever it may be. Chatbots are becoming pretty much universal on websites that individual would be using to make reservations, etc. It all goes back to the prompt. So these are all resources on prompts and different AI. And Copilot's one of my favorites. It's a Microsoft product, but it's free out there. And I could take information like in here. I was just going to offer an example of a plot, but I want to give it some time for questions. And so I can create exit. What I was going to share with you here real quickly is the fact that I could take this and it will, the Copilot, it's worth the example. And of course I closed my Copilot, so I apologize. Let me just give you a quick example here of what I'm talking about. So Copilot, just like ChatGPT, and I'm going to sign into mine. So give me a moment here, and then I'll open up for questions. And I apologize, I've kind of jumped over some things. I wanted to include too much. It's always my problem. I try to include too much, but hopefully I've hit on some of those nuggets. But I'm going to copy and paste that information in there about exit interview tickets. And so this is going to now give me a variety of ways to allow for us to create exit tickets. And I think my example was in teacher education. But if you haven't used AI in this manner, think of what we could do as parents and educators to come up with ideas and ways to generate resources and ways to facilitate things more efficiently with the use of AI for our son or daughter or the children we work with. But increasingly, the Nolans of the world can utilize this to also come up with solutions, to come up with ideas, to come up with supports they may need out there in employment or as they transition to that, be it also things that they'll use throughout the school day. All right, so I'm going to go ahead, and there's a lot more resources out here. So for example, one last thing I will mention is things like Pear Deck and Canva, and these are technologies that have been out there for years. They are now using AI for, so for example, if I want to create a Quizlet, students can be more independent in using AI to use the technology to learn the terms, to be more participation in the class, to be more successful there. So for example, Pear Deck, this is the link here where I created a presentation, or AI created a presentation in Pear Deck with a simple prompt on my end. All right, so there's the slideshow. I'll put it back up there for just a moment. Again, I mentioned several things. Things are linked there to go in greater detail. I literally tip of the iceberg on several different ideas. Probably I needed to go a little bit deeper, but let me go ahead and leave this up here for a moment and see if there are questions, because I think I'm supposed to end here in about, less than 10 minutes. So I'll stop here for a moment, see if there's questions, and we'll go from there.
Thank you so much, Dr. This is just fantastic. As a reminder, if you're joining us on Zoom, please put your questions in the Q&A box so they don't get lost in chat. And if you're joining us on Facebook, you can put your questions in the comments and we'll get those as well. So, so we have a question. Do you have any information or a description about Microsoft OneNote? This parent says they found that it's been a great tool to help their high school with note taking, especially with the embedded accessibility features. But she's finding that schools and special education departments are not really aware of that. So any more information or description?
Well, I don't have anything available to right now to share OneNote, but OneNote is there are several different products out there that allow for note taking. OneNote is one of them, correct. The one thing I would be pushing with OneNote is that it's a Microsoft product, and now Microsoft has really made an initiative, an effort to further integrate into schools. So I mentioned Immersive Reader, and if you're not using Immersive Reader with OneNote, I'd urge you to do it. Whoever's ever asking the question, because Immersive Reader will do text to speech, but it'll also, therefore, it'll highlight any text you're working with, and it'll integrate that with Word, it'll integrate that with PowerPoint, it'll integrate that, like I said, with Canvas, a learning management system, but also it allows for teachers to assess for reading. It has a reading coach element to it. And so OneNote, as a product of Microsoft, could be utilized there for note taking, but also to get teachers to be thinking about it, having them also think, well, gosh, if I'm using OneNote, I can use Immersive Reader and others. I'm seeing a lot of buy-in with educators when they find out that that tool is also part of a family of tools, is my point. Besides, I mean, OneNote, the ins and outs of the features, I don't have that in front of me to be able to facilitate and share, but certainly anything that allows for templates, anything that allows for some supports in terms of the audio recording as well as text, as well as allowing the audio to turn into text. Those are increasingly AI features and note-taking tools. There's a number of products that do that, so the student doesn't necessarily have to take down everything, and they may miss things being spoken. So I could go on, and I could go sideways on note-taking in terms of what's the purpose of note-taking. I just showed you DIFIT. The teacher themselves could take their presentation and actually provide notes with a click of a button. I'd argue there's more value in that than the student learning to take notes. In all honesty, there's a lot of value in me having a template to then understand and study. It's not so much the note-taking task, it's the studying post and note-taking that we want. And so AI is increasingly allowing faculty members in K-12 as well as post-secondary to create those notes so that we're not having to take the notes ourselves, which we often might list. So I'd urge you to look into AI for those purposes as well. So.
Excellent. So one parent is asking if you have any suggestions for the best free applications. Once students graduate, they lose school emails and then access to Microsoft without paying. So any suggestions on free applications?
Well, Google is like, so for example, I mentioned Copilot, but Gemini is out there for Google, or ChatGPT has its own features as well. So I'm just using Microsoft for a moment, just because it's part of a family. But I definitely, I'm a big Google user. I like Google. Google's free. I can utilize my Gmail for that. Google Classroom is often used in our schools. So having the student using Google Classroom and the Google tools, which then can go with them into adulthood, are things to consider. The other thing to consider is that take the time with the consideration, the assessment part of AT, to determine what types of tools are best for your son or daughter or the child you're working with. So as they go into the life beyond, they can at least know, okay, so I need a word prediction tool. Well, great. Now I can at least understand what features of the word prediction tool I need. They may be using Co-Writer in school for pay, but now at least I know these are the elements of a word prediction tool I need. And then I can go and find some word predictions using, literally using some searches, working with the team before we leave, because there's a number of word prediction tools out there. So from my emphasis here is better understanding the technology that is useful in the school environment. And then, yes, pivoting to the free later on. Google's going to have a lot of those. There are some freemiums out there, and it may be the fact that this is a really effective one. So this one I will pay for because my child's been trained on it. There's an annual fee that's fairly nominal, and I know my child's going to really benefit from it going forward. So it's kind of a combination. And again, I hope my rambles didn't lose you on the emphasis of learning what's very helpful in the school environment to then use post-secondary. So.
All right, lots of questions. Anything for students with visual impairment or low vision?
That's not an area of expertise for me, sadly. Increasingly there are a number of things that are offering text to speech. Text to speech for that flexibility. Feel free to email me. My email's on that presentation. Let me see if I can personalize that. I don't have anything right now to think about it. Again, I'd have to do a little digging. I'm certainly willing to do that, but sorry.
All right. So another parent asks, do you have any recommendations on resources to teach children how to use AI?
So I think one element of how to use AI is the prompting. And so right now, I would say games where they're learning to use their own words to be able to ask for, and that game I mentioned a moment ago is something we're using with, okay, so how would you ask someone to draw that picture? But anything where they're utilizing anything word-wise to inquire for a question or a request. The more they can do that, the more the AI is going to be able to respond to that. So that prompting is one area. The resources I offered were for educators because that's what's out there for free right now. But I think the same idea is out there. That would be one. The other would be trying to find an AI tool that aligns with what they're currently doing. And so I mentioned some broader ones like Copilot or ChatGPT, but Diffit would be one. And again, that may not be relevant for our learners, but it's a very unique one. It takes information and repurpose it into study guides and things of that nature. So there's a number of different individual AI tools that a student could get comfortable with. And where I'm going with this is that that tool will require prompts. That tool will require information to go in, be it a chatbot, whatever, for the information to then come out, then they interact with, very much like a conversation. The more comfortable they get with that tool, they'll be able to generalize that into other tools. We're seeing that, even though we know generalization is difficult for a lot of our peers. That's something that we found to be an incremental support, if that helps. So.
Thank you so much. I know we don't have time to get to all the questions, but in the interest of time, we're going to go ahead and wrap up. We appreciate all of you joining us today for the webinar. And Dr. Smith, thank you. I always come away with a new program or website or something that I wasn't aware of every time I watch a webinar or anything that you do. So thank you so much for this wealth of information for families and professionals. Thank you again so much. So let me share my screen and we're going to go ahead and wrap up today. All right, so again, as a reminder, we are recording today's webinar. The recording is available on our website at prntexas.org and also on our Facebook page. And for those of you that are needing a certificate of attendance, you will receive an email to thank you for attending today's webinar. If you follow the link in that email, you can get your certificate of attendance. I want to thank all of our agencies that have worked together for this webinar series that we're doing this fall. Joining us with Partners Resource Network is Disability Rights Texas, West Texas A&M University Center for Learning Disabilities, of course, the University of Kansas, the University of South Florida, and the Florida Center for Inclusive Communities, Texas A&M University AgriLife Extension, and the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities, and also CADRE, the Center for Appropriate Dispute Resolution and Special Education. So thank you to all of our collaborative partners for this series. Coming up next in this year, on October 9th, we have Understanding Motivations in Conflict, Leveraging Human Nature for Successful Engagement with Randall Reese, mediator and facilitator with CADRE. On October 22nd, we have What's Function Got to Do with It? Behavior and its Impact on Your Child's Education with Dr. Laura Kern, an associate research professor at the University of South Florida and the Florida Center for Inclusive Communities. On October 29th, we have Let's Chat. Communication Strategies Are Key with Dr. Morgan Foster, Texas A&M University AgriLife Extension Service, and the Texas Council for Developmental Disabilities. And we're going to wrap up this series on November 12th with Resolving Conflicts Constructively. Informed Parents Make Informed Choices with Dr. Timothy Hedin, CADRE Senior Consultant. All right, on the screen is contact information for our Director of Statewide Services, Christina, our support specialist, Chelsea, and myself. Please check out our website again at prntexas.org for information on upcoming webinars and events in your regions, as well as lots of information for parents. You can follow us on Facebook and X at PRN Texas. Thank you again. And Dr. Smith, again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate it. I loved hearing about what Nolan did on his presentation. Really exciting stuff to see how you were able to use technology and use other things to help him access the curriculum. Really appreciated that. And thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you again and have a wonderful day.
Thanks. Hopefully it hit on some of the elements you needed. And I know it was
Absolutely.
transition heavy, but hopefully it gave some examples. So, yeah.
Oh,
It was fantastic. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Thank you
If I
so
can help in any way,
much.
let me know. So reach out.
Absolutely. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye now.